The night was inky black, a thick shroud that swallowed everything in its path. The moon was nowhere to be seen, and the stars were obscured by heavy clouds, leaving me to navigate the winding, desolate road with nothing but my car's feeble headlights. I had been driving for hours, lost in the labyrinth of unfamiliar backroads. My phone's GPS signal had long since disappeared, and I had no choice but to rely on the vague directions given to me by the gas station attendant miles back. He had warned me to avoid this road at night, saying that strange things happened here after dark, but I had dismissed his words as the ramblings of a local superstition. The trees loomed overhead, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, their leaves rustling ominously in the wind. I could feel the weight of the darkness pressing down on me, and a sense of unease settled in the pit of my stomach. But I couldn't turn back now. I had to reach my destination before dawn. As I drove deeper into the night, I began to notice strange occurrences. Shadowy figures darted across the road, too fast to be animals. Unearthly whispers echoed through the car, words that I couldn't quite make out. I tried to tell myself that it was just my imagination, that the isolation of the road was playing tricks on my mind, but the feeling of being watched was undeniable. Suddenly, my headlights illuminated a figure standing in the middle of the road. I slammed on the brakes, the tires screeching as the car skidded to a stop. My heart pounded in my chest as I stared at the silhouette before me. It was a woman, dressed in a tattered white gown that billowed in the wind. Her long, tangled hair obscured her face, and she seemed to be swaying slightly, as if caught in an invisible breeze. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized she was barefoot, her pale feet hovering just above the asphalt. I rolled down the window cautiously, my voice quivering as I called out to her. "Are you okay? Do you need help?" The woman didn't respond, her hair continuing to obscure her face. She simply stood there, a ghostly presence in the night. Panic welled up inside me as I considered my options. I couldn't just leave her here, but I was too terrified to get out of the car. Summoning every ounce of courage I had, I opened the car door and stepped out onto the road. The night air was icy against my skin, and the silence was deafening. I took a hesitant step toward the woman, my heart pounding in my chest. "Are you lost?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Still, she didn't respond. She just swayed there, her hair obscuring her face, her eyes hidden in the shadows. I took another step closer, my breath coming out in visible puffs in the cold night air. "Please, you can't stay here," I pleaded. "I'll give you a ride to the nearest town." As I reached out to touch her shoulder, she suddenly jerked her head up, her hair falling away from her face to reveal hollow, empty eye sockets. I screamed and stumbled back, my heart racing as I realized I was standing in the presence of something not of this world. The woman let out a bone-chilling, unearthly wail that echoed through the night. In an instant, the road around us transformed. The trees seemed to come to life, their branches contorting into grotesque shapes. The shadows on the road writhed and twisted, forming grotesque figures that seemed to be closing in on me. I sprinted back to my car, panic and terror gripping me. The engine roared to life as I fumbled with the keys, and I floored the gas pedal, desperate to escape this nightmarish nightmare. The road ahead seemed to stretch on endlessly, each twist and turn leading me deeper into the abyss. The car's headlights flickered and dimmed, casting eerie, intermittent shadows on the road. I glanced in the rearview mirror and froze. The woman in the tattered gown was standing in the middle of the road again, her hair obscuring her face, her eye sockets empty and hollow. She was closer now, much closer. I swerved the car to avoid her, my tires screeching in protest. The car skidded dangerously close to the edge of the road, and for a moment I thought I was going to plunge into the darkness below. But, at the last second, I regained control and sped away, leaving the wailing specter behind. Hours passed, or maybe it was only minutes. I couldn't tell in the disorienting darkness. Eventually, the road began to straighten out, and I saw the faint glimmer of dawn on the horizon. The nightmarish landscape began to fade, and the oppressive darkness lifted. I drove until I reached a small town, where I finally pulled over, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. I couldn't stop shaking, and I couldn't shake the feeling that the woman in the tattered gown was still out there, watching, waiting. It's a memory that haunts me to this day, that there are places where the line between the living and the dead hold unspeakable horrors, After that harrowing night, I struggled to move on with my life. The memory of the spectral woman in the tattered gown with her hollow eye sockets haunted my every waking moment. I became obsessed with finding answers, with understanding what had happened to me on that cursed road. I started researching local legends and stories, hoping to uncover some clue about the nightmarish encounter. It wasn't long before I stumbled upon an old, weathered journal in the town's library. The journal belonged to a man named Samuel Loomis, who had lived in the area over a century ago. His entries chronicled his own nightmarish experience on the same road. According to Samuel's journal, he had encountered the same spectral woman on a moonless night. And like me, he had offered her assistance. But when she revealed her hollow eye sockets, he had been paralyzed by fear, unable to escape her grasp. His final entry described his descent into madness, his scribbles becoming increasingly incoherent. I was horrified by the similarities between Samuel's experience and my own. It seemed that the road I had traveled on was cursed, a place where the veil between the living and the dead was thin, where restless spirits sought to ensnare the living. I had unknowingly ventured into a realm of darkness and despair. Determined to find answers, I returned to the road that had become my living nightmare. It was during daylight hours this time, as I couldn't bring myself to face that cursed place at night. The trees that had seemed so sinister in the dark now appeared ordinary, their branches free of the grotesque contortions that had haunted me. As I walked along the road, I noticed a small, weathered marker hidden among the trees. It bore an inscription that sent shivers down my spine. "Beware the restless soul." It was a warning, a message from those who had come before me, a message I had failed to heed. Driven by a sense of duty, I decided to contact the descendants of Samuel Loomis, hoping to learn more about his fate and the history of the road. I discovered that his family had passed down the stories of his encounter with the spectral woman, tales of madness and despair that had haunted them for generations. One evening, as I sat in the Loomis family's old, dimly lit farmhouse, an elderly woman named Eliza Loomis revealed the full truth to me. She explained that the road was cursed by an ancient malevolent spirit known as the Lady of the Shadows. The lady had been wronged in life, and her vengeful spirit now roamed the road, seeking to ensnare those who crossed her path. Eliza described a ritual that could potentially break the curse, a dangerous and perilous undertaking. It involved confronting the Lady of the Shadows and offering her a chance for redemption. The risk was immense, as the lady's wrath was legendary, but it was the only way to free the road from her sinister grip. With the knowledge I had gained and a sense of determination, I set out to confront the Lady of the Shadows. Armed with offerings of candles and incense, I returned to that cursed road one final time, determined to put an end to the terror that had plagued me for so long. As night fell and the darkness closed in, I lit the candles and incense, creating a circle of light and protection. I called out to the Lady of the Shadows, offering her forgiveness and redemption for whatever wrongs had been done to her in life. The air grew cold, and a sinister presence began to manifest itself. The spectral woman, the Lady of the Shadows, materialized before me, her hollow eye sockets fixed on mine. I held my ground, my heart pounding, and continued to offer her forgiveness and redemption. For a moment, the lady's form wavered, and a mournful wail echoed through the night. Then, with a final haunting look, she dissipated into the darkness, her malevolent presence vanishing into the night. The road was silent once more, the curse broken. I had faced the darkness and emerged victorious, but the scars of that night would never truly fade. I knew that the Lady of the Shadows would no longer haunt the road, but the memory of her and the terror she had instilled in me would linger for a lifetime. As I walked away from that forsaken place, I couldn't help but wonder if the lady had found the redemption she had sought. Perhaps, in some small way, I had helped her find peace in the afterlife, but for me, the scars of that night would remain. A constant reminder of the night I ventured into the abyss and confronted the horrors that lurked within.